This video is supported in part by Retro Days, a place for nostalgia nerds to gather, share memories, chat, and engage. Go to retrodays.com or check their YouTube channel linked below. Hey there, welcome back to Gen X Grown Up. I'm John, and I am a Gen X Grown Up. If you caught our video last week, you'll remember that we took this little Atari Raspberry Pi from Micro Center and put it through its paces. This is just a small Raspberry Pi that was running Retropie and had some licensed Atari images on it for both like arcade and home consoles. It was really neat, but it wasn't quite up to snuff for what I had hoped out of the box. There was some stuff that just straight up did not work. Now, maybe the most glaring of the problems I experienced here were those with controls. Many of the games were just straight up broken the way the controls were mapped, and there was no way to remap those controls. A little research and I found out that effectively what I needed to do was upgrade to a newer version of Raspberry Pi. Well, based on some recommendations from friends, I decided to actually move on from Raspberry Pi to something relatively new called Recalbox. So I got a brand new 64 gig SD card, bumped it up double to what they provided, installed Recalbox on there, harvested all of the Atari ROMs they had given me on the first stick, and put those in. Now, the great thing with Recalbox is out of the gate, it's a huge UI improvement. You go from this thing to this. I mean, it's super polished and something you could be proud to show to anybody as your primary emulation system. So now that we've got this little unit really humming, it's time to crank it up to 11. 183 games? Yeah, that's cute. Hold my beer. We're gonna put hundreds and hundreds of ROMs on there across dozens of systems to really make this thing sing. We're gonna do all of that right now. Don't you know that you're a grown up? No games, no puns. Not allowed if you're a grown up. Now, a handy feature of both Retropie and Recalbox that we're using now in this case is they provide a file share to make it really easy to move files, in this case ROMs, into the file system of the Pi. So as you can see, I've navigated here to Recalbox, and if I just hop into this shared folder, I'm presented with all of the files that are available for me to add stuff to. And in this case, I'm interested in the ROMs folder. And when you jump in there, there's a folder for every type of system that this can emulate. And that's the Atari 2600 and the arcade games and stuff we've looked at. I mean, dozens more. Look, if you scroll through this, you can see Amiga, Amstrad, Apple, Atari, Coleco, Dreamcast, Game Boy, Lynx, Mega Drive, N64, Neo. That's tons of stuff. So for example, the Atari 2600. So I'm gonna hop in there and then I'm gonna navigate to my Atari 2600 ROM set. And there's my game ROMs, and I have a ton of them. And it's thousands, but there's a lot of clones. What I wanna try to do is represent as many unique and interesting things. And so, like, I'll search for like everything that's Activision maybe. Yep, all of those, and we'll move those in. Then we do something like the NES that has so many images that are available. And if I go into my NES folder, yeah, I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. We don't want all of them. So, like, maybe I'll take the ones like a single release like USA. We'll find all the USA images. That comes up in a search, and we'll grab all of those and throw them in there. That's several hundred right there. ColecoVision is another one. You got to get some Coleco in there. So let's find what I've got in ColecoVision ROMs. And, you know, it's not all that many. It's about 300. Let's put all of those on here. On the classic computer front, yeah, I put some Atari 800 stuff on there, but how about Commodore 64? So they emulate that too. So we'll jump in and see what I've got in the Commodore 64 folder. Yeah, I've got like 5,000 of them. Let's take a subset at least, and we'll move those over there as well. So I've copied over a bunch of ROM images for consoles and computers alike onto here. Arcade stuff I want to make sure is well represented on this box as well. So when I go in the MAME folder, I'm going to hop in my MAME folder, but rather than try to overtask this little Raspberry Pi, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all ROM images below a certain size. Like if I sort by size, you can see that some images are hundreds of megs a piece, but the classic, the old school arcade games are much, much, much smaller. So I'm just taking ROM images that are lower than, like less than 10 megs or so, which still gives us hundreds of cool games. I mentioned earlier that we'll be giving away this very little Atari Pi once we're done making videos with it. If you would like a chance to win, it's super easy. Just head over to our Discord server at genxgrownup.com/Discord. Once you're there, look for the channel called Gen X Grown Up Contest. Go in that channel, go into the chat box. All you do is type in Atari Pi, hit enter, and you are registered to win. Just be sure you check back periodically on the server, because once we select a winner, we'll notify you by private message right there in our Discord channel. So we're back in this really slick interface, which I think looks awesome, by the way. I'll say the Recall box has a little less customization available in terms of skins, but you barely need it because it looks so great. So I'm going to hop in the menu here, and all you're going to do is come down to the UI and say Update Game List. During this reboot, it's scanning for new images, new ROMs, all that kind of stuff, and when it comes back, it should tell us some good news. All right, so we're booted back up. Let's see, 500 Atari games, 5,200, 150 of those, 7,800, 190, 800, 5,000 Atari 800 games. We got Commodore. We got it all on here. So let's look at a total. I think they have a grouping. Every one of these has hundreds of games in it. Let's see, the arcade MAME, I put 11,000 in there. Not too shabby. Nintendo 64, there's 800 of those games. All right, let's come down to the all and see what our total is. 32,090 individual ROMs. Now there are some duplicates, some prototypes, things like that, but you're talking thousands and thousands of different ROM images, different games across different platforms. So let's just hop in and take a look at how it looks with all these games in here. So many. But let's jump into, I don't know, let's look at Adventure. I always like looking at Adventure, why not? Yeah, Adventure. Oh, there's my sword right off the bat. So controls are great here, but even more so than just like the joystick controls, what I love about what I'm finding here in the kind of Retropie environment running Atari games, it's so, maybe the best way to play Atari games short of the actual console. And that's because of the way they map the controllers so well. Because later Atari games, they use the color black white switch, they use the, they use the difficulty switches for things other than just color black and white difficulty. And now in here, like I can switch to black and white color on my joystick. Look at me just switching between those. I can change the difficulty switch on my joystick. Now I'm in Missile Command here. You'll remember in the previous video, I had trouble with Missile Command. I couldn't remap the controls and I couldn't move the cursor. I couldn't fire from all my bases. Nothing was really working properly. And this, just like with Asteroid, just like with everything, I have full control over all that stuff. I can hop into this overlay and tweak the controls for just this game if I want. Jump back out, and you still have like rewind, the ability to do save states and all that kind of stuff. It's great, and I got over all those little humps. How about some Sega Genesis Ultra Beast? Yeah, absolutely, I've got that too. How about some Super Mario on the NES? Sure, why not? Kickboxing on the TurboGrafx 16? Yep. Here's some Super Nintendo Aladdin for you. Here's Vectrex Mindstorm. If you ever had a Vectrex, that's in here. Here's one of my favorite old Atari Lynx games. This is Todd's Adventures in Slime World, and it's working great. I think you probably get the point. There's a lot of good stuff on here across a ton of systems. Now, I haven't tested every single game or every game in every system and every variant. There's a lot of variation of releases and hacks and prototypes. There's a lot of great stuff on here. The point is not a contest to see how much I could pack on it. The point was to really explore what you could do with a unit like that. And man, I would hazard to say you can do a lot if you're willing to get your fingers dirty. This has really turned out to be way more of a project than I thought it was going to be. Now, I knew I was going to have to build a little case and put the Raspberry Pi in it. I didn't expect that it wasn't going to perform the way I had hoped out of the gate, and I was going to have to figure out how to make it do what I expected it to do. I'm not upset that I'm doing all this stuff. Honestly, I'm learning a lot about Raspberry Pi. I had some great help from some of our viewers and followers over on our Discord server. They answered a lot of questions for me, got in remote sessions. Thank you guys for that. And we're, again, not yet finished with this little Atari Pi. Since this all came about because I was a little underwhelmed by the Atari VCS, and now that I've had a lot of experience with this little guy, I'm going to take the Atari VCS and this little Raspberry Pi and put them side by side and find out which is better across several criteria in terms of value and enjoyment and all sorts of things. I won't spoil it here. Now, of course, we're giving this one away. If you fast forward to the end of the video to find out how to sign up, again, shame on you. Go back and find earlier in the video where I did that. Otherwise, I really hope you found something to enjoy in this video, and I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye. Hey, you made it to the end. If you liked this video, the best way to say thanks is to watch one more. Here are a couple suggestions that you just might enjoy. And if you love our content, maybe consider becoming a Patreon supporter by following the link on screen. Unacceptable for grown-ups. Your dinner cannot just be French fries.